Have you ever wondered if the search for love in your golden years might come with hidden risks? As we get older, the quest for companionship becomes even more meaningful. But with the desire for connection comes a potential pitfall. Imagine finding a partner who not only steals your heart but also your hard-earned savings. You may feel like you found the perfect match, only to realize too late that their intentions were far from genuine. In today's video, we're diving into the crucial truths about romantic relationships in later life. Truths that everyone, especially those in their golden years, should be aware of. Why should you stick around until the very end? Well, we're going to explore the stories of real seniors who have been deceived by romantic partners, uncover how the aging process can make us more vulnerable to both emotional manipulation and financial greed, and most importantly, we'll be sharing strategies to protect both your heart and your hard-earned wealth. Along the way, we'll draw on insights from timeless wisdom found in ancient Buddhist teachings, share confessions from iconic figures like Elvis Presley and Freddie Mercury, and offer you practical advice on how to cultivate healthy, fulfilling relationships, without falling into the trap of obsession or unhealthy dependency. Whether you're dipping your toes back into the dating pool for the first time after retirement, or you're simply looking to strengthen and safeguard the relationships you already have, this video is your essential guide. We'll show you how to love wisely, live securely, and navigate the complex emotions that often accompany relationships in your senior years. By the end, you'll be empowered with the knowledge and tools needed to enjoy love with dignity and protect your peace of mind. If you're not already subscribed, I highly recommend doing so now and hitting the notification bell so you never miss a video. Your support means so much to me, and if you find value in today's discussion, please help spread these important lessons by liking, commenting, and sharing this video with others. If you like the topic of this video, please comment 1. If not, I'd appreciate your feedback. Comment 0, and let me know how I can improve and create better content for you. Now, let's dive right in and get started. First, be wary of con artists seeking money. The idea of love in your later years can bring a rush of excitement and joy. The thought of finding someone special to share your time with can feel like a dream come true. However, for some, that feeling of connection isn't just about companionship. It can be an opportunity to exploit someone's generosity. Imagine this: a widowed grandfather, eager to start anew, quickly falls for a woman who seems kind, attentive, and loving. After just a few months, he makes a seemingly innocent decision. He hands over control of his bank account, convinced that love is about sharing everything. What he didn't anticipate, however, was that his love and his savings would both vanish in the blink of an eye. It's a painful but all too common story. As we get older, our desire for intimacy and connection can sometimes cloud our judgment, making us more susceptible to individuals who prey on our vulnerability. Con artists often target seniors, taking advantage of the trust and warmth that come with a late-in-life romance. That's why it's critical to be cautious, especially when it comes to your finances. Trust should be earned, not given away blindly. So, while the idea of love and companionship in your senior years is beautiful, it's essential to protect yourself emotionally and financially. If someone is truly in love with you, they won't rush to share your bank account or ask for anything before they've proven their loyalty and commitment. Keep your heart open, but also keep your eyes wide open to the potential risks. Trust your instincts, and take the necessary steps to safeguard your financial security. Second, age makes one more susceptible to physical greed. There's an old saying, "A strong flame can consume itself with its heat." This rings especially true when it comes to love and desire as we age. In our younger years, we might be driven by passion, ambition, and the excitement of new experiences. But in our later years, loneliness and longing can simmer beneath the surface, like embers waiting to ignite. When that emotional fire is fed too much, however, it can burn out of control, leaving us vulnerable to exploitation and regret. I once knew a grandmother in her early 80s who had been a vibrant, beloved figure in our small town. Always cheerful, always with a story to tell, she was the heart of the community. But one day, she arrived at a local gathering looking different. Dressed up, more glamorous than usual, with a sparkle in her eye that caught everyone's attention. People were curious, but no one dared to ask her about it directly. It wasn't long before whispers began circulating that she had started spending time with a younger man. She ignored the gossip, dismissing it with a confident declaration. There's no age limit for love. But, over time, the rumors proved true. This man, who had seemed so attentive and charming, was eventually revealed to be after much more than her companionship. He had taken advantage of her trust and drained her savings before disappearing, leaving her to face the harsh reality. It was at that moment that she reflected on a line from Buddhist teachings that had always resonated with her. Desire is like a burning arrow. Behind a fleeting joy lies a deep wound. Desire gives temporary sweetness, but its end always returns to emptiness. This, she realized, was exactly what had happened to her. The short-lived thrill of attention had turned into a lifetime of regret. Psychologists often explain that as we age, while our physical bodies may change, our emotional needs, especially the need for connection, don't necessarily diminish. The loneliness of old age can amplify our desires, sometimes clouding our judgment and making us more susceptible to physical greed. If we can't manage that desire wisely, we risk losing our sense of self, our dignity, and most painfully, our security. There's an old saying from the Myeong Shim Bogam, a classic Korean text, that goes, "If you do not control your greed, you cannot attain peace of mind." This ancient wisdom holds just as much relevance today as it did centuries ago. Elvis Presley, the legendary musician, once confessed to struggling with his desires, saying, "I tried to fill the emptiness inside me with something else, but in the end, I almost lost myself." Despite having everything that money could buy, Elvis felt an inner void that couldn't be filled by material things or fleeting pleasures. This is the paradox of desire. The more we chase it, the more elusive it becomes. Our desires are endless, but true wisdom comes from learning how to manage them, to find fulfillment that isn't rooted in fleeting pleasures or physical greed. This is the challenge we face as we grow older, not just surviving but thriving with wisdom and peace of mind. Third, be cautious of obsessive behavior aimed at fulfilling your greed. In every neighborhood, there's often that one person who seems to think the world revolves around them. I once knew a woman named Linda who was notorious for always declaring, "I'm the best. I deserve the best." Her bold attitude wasn't confined to her social life. It extended into her romantic relationships as well. Linda would always make sure her partners knew how lucky they were to be with her, expecting constant admiration and attention. But as time passed, something curious happened. One by one, her relationships fell apart. She became more demanding, more possessive, and more determined to fulfill her desires, often at the expense of her partner's emotional needs. Eventually, she found herself alone. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 1 below to let me know that you are still here with me. Linda's story is not an isolated case. It's a lesson in how an obsession with getting your own needs met, especially when you're older and more set in your ways, can quickly turn love into something that feels like a trap. When someone is fixated on fulfilling their desires, whether it's seeking constant reassurance or expecting their partner to always be available, it can easily smother the relationship. What starts as passion can morph into an unhealthy attachment, and that's when the relationship begins to feel less like love and more like a burden. Psychologists warn that when we focus too heavily on our own emotional needs in a relationship, it can create a sense of imbalance. Instead of giving and receiving love freely, we end up trying to extract love or attention in a way that feels exhausting for the other person. In relationships, particularly later in life, this can be especially damaging. If you're not careful, you risk pushing away potential partners by becoming too needy or controlling. The irony is that while you might think you're securing affection by focusing on your desires, you're driving the very thing you want most, true connection, away. This is why it's so important to approach relationships with emotional maturity and balance. As we age, our emotional needs may intensify, but we must remember that a healthy relationship is one where both partners are willing to meet each other halfway. Love thrives on respect, understanding, and mutual support, not on obsessive behaviors or self-centered greed. If you find yourself constantly seeking validation or expecting more from your partner than they can give, it's time to take a step back and reassess your approach. True love, the kind that endures and grows, isn't built on self-interest. It's built on selflessness, trust, and shared happiness. In Linda's case, her obsession with proving herself to be the best ultimately led her down a lonely path. It's a powerful reminder that love is not about controlling or fulfilling your own desires at the expense of another. It's about mutual respect, vulnerability, and the ability to let go of selfishness for the sake of building a strong, healthy relationship. Fourth, handle the desire to emotionally rely on others carefully. As we grow older, one of the most universal feelings we face is loneliness. It's a quiet, persistent companion that often becomes more pronounced when our daily routines change, such as during retirement, the loss of a spouse, or when children become less involved in our lives. At these times, the desire to emotionally rely on someone, particularly a romantic partner, can become overwhelming. The need to share intimate moments, to feel seen and valued, can seem like a lifeline. But while this emotional yearning is perfectly natural, it's important to be careful not to fall into the trap of relying too heavily on someone else to fill that void. In one case I remember, there was a gentleman named Robert, who in his mid-70s, became very involved with a woman he had met online. Initially, he was drawn to her kindness and attention, which helped ease his loneliness after losing his wife a few years earlier. But as their relationship progressed, Robert began to expect more and more from her emotionally. He wanted her to be his source of happiness, his constant companion, and someone who could fill the emotional gaps he felt. When she couldn't live up to those expectations, whether due to her limitations or simply the natural incompatibilities between them, Robert experienced deep disappointment and heartbreak. His idealized vision of the relationship turned into a painful reality, as he found himself emotionally drained and feeling betrayed. Robert's experience highlights the importance of managing our own emotional needs, especially as we age. It's tempting to seek a romantic relationship as a quick solution to loneliness, but when we rely too heavily on another person for our emotional well-being, we risk creating unrealistic expectations. This is why it's essential to develop a strong sense of emotional independence. The more we rely on ourselves to handle loneliness, the less we will need from others to feel complete. This doesn't mean rejecting love or companionship, but rather finding ways to fulfill our own emotional needs without depending entirely on someone else. It's easy to think that a romantic partner can be the answer to our loneliness, but the truth is, no one person can ever completely heal us. Our emotional well-being should be built on a foundation of self-respect, self-care, and personal fulfillment. By learning to embrace our own company and find joy in solitary activities or friendships that don't carry the heavy burden of romantic expectation, we can better protect ourselves from the emotional risks of rushing into relationships in our later years. This is especially true when it comes to romantic relationships. As we age, it's crucial to approach new connections with a sense of wisdom, patience, and emotional balance. When you enter a relationship to share love and companionship, rather than seeking to fill a void or fix yourself, you set yourself up for healthier, more fulfilling connections. Remember that emotional maturity involves being able to stand alone, knowing that you are whole and complete as you are. In the end, while the desire to emotionally rely on a romantic partner is natural, it's essential to approach it with caution. True emotional health comes not from depending on others to provide us with constant reassurance or joy, but from learning to cultivate our inner peace and happiness. I hope today's discussion has encouraged you to be more mindful of your emotional needs and relationships as you navigate the complexities of love in your senior years. May you continue to lead a life filled with dignity, wisdom, and meaningful connections, no matter what stage of life you're in. First, be wary of con artists seeking money. There's an old saying that goes, money and love coming together is like walking a path in the dawn mist. At first, the path seems clear, but with every step, the mist grows thicker, blurring the lines between genuine affection and hidden motives. What at first appeared to be a beautiful relationship can quickly become clouded with deceit, leaving you unsure whether you were ever truly loved or simply preyed upon. Today, let's explore the hidden dangers of combining love with finances, and why it's so important to approach relationships carefully, especially in our later years. Take, for instance, the story of Robert Parks, a retired engineer who had worked tirelessly throughout his life. By the time Robert reached his 70s, he had built a comfortable nest egg and had enjoyed the fruits of his labor. However, after the loss of his wife, the loneliness he felt was overwhelming. His children had grown up, moved out, and started families of their own, and Robert found himself alone, unsure of how to fill the emotional void in his life. One day, at a local senior center, Robert met Linda, a woman in her mid-60s who seemed to light up the room with her charm. She was kind, attentive, and always seemed to have a smile on her face. She began to care for Robert, helping him with errands, taking him out for coffee, and ensuring he wasn't lonely. Robert, desperate for companionship and flattered by her attention, found himself quickly falling for her. Linda would often tell him, "Sharing love is what keeps us healthy, Robert. You don't have to carry everything on your own." As the months went by, Linda's care for Robert seemed to deepen, and she made him feel cherished. Eventually, she said to him, "Robert, I see how hard it is for you to manage everything on your own. Why don't you let me help you more? Let me handle your bills and make sure you're set for the future." She continued, "You know, love is about sharing. I'm happy to help take care of things for you." Robert, moved by her kindness and her gentle encouragement, agreed to let her take charge of his finances. But not long after, Linda asked for access to Robert's bank account, promising that it would make things easier for both of them. The thought of having someone to rely on, someone who seemed to care so deeply, clouded his judgment. The warning bells in his mind, faint and distant, could barely be heard. His instincts told him to be cautious, but his loneliness led him to trust her completely. The next day, Linda vanished. Her phone went unanswered, and she never returned to Robert's house. His heart sank as the realization set in. He frantically searched for her, but it was too late. She had emptied his accounts and disappeared without a trace. Robert sat alone in his empty living room, his thoughts turning to a passage from a Buddhist scripture that he had once read. By stealing others' hearts, one gets lost. He now understood its meaning in a way he never had before. Linda had stolen more than just his money. She had stolen his trust, his hope, and his sense of security. He thought back to a saying his father once told him, "Too much is worse than too little." In his desperation to find companionship and avoid his loneliness, Robert had trusted someone too quickly, without the proper boundaries, and in doing so, had allowed his emotions to cloud his judgment. He had the money, but he didn't have peace of mind. Had he been more cautious and maintained a healthier sense of independence, he could have lived out his years without the stress of financial worry. Instead, he had chosen temporary joy, a fleeting companionship, and now he was left to pick up the pieces of his shattered trust. The lesson here is simple but powerful. Love is not a substitute for wisdom, and trust must always be earned, not given blindly. Especially in our later years, when loneliness can be a heavy burden, it's crucial to be wary of those who may try to take advantage of your emotions or your finances. True affection doesn't come with strings attached, and it certainly doesn't require giving away your hard-earned savings. While the desire for connection is natural, it's essential to protect both your heart and your wallet. Second, age makes one more susceptible to physical greed. There's an adage that says, "A strong flame can consume itself with its heat." The same is true for love and desire, especially as we age. Our emotional needs, long buried under years of responsibility and routine, can flare up with intensity, much like smoldering embers waiting to ignite. As we grow older, the longing for companionship and intimacy can become overwhelming, sometimes leading us down paths we wouldn't have considered in our younger years. But just like a fire that burns too hot, these desires, if left unchecked, can ultimately burn us. I think about a neighbor of mine, Alice Turner, a woman in her late 80s, who had always been full of life and well-loved in our community. She was known for her wit and charm, and no one would have guessed her age, given her energy. But one day, at a local community event, Alice appeared dressed in a new outfit, fancier than usual. People exchanged curious glances, but no one dared to ask what was going on. Over the next few weeks, she started spending a lot of time with a much younger man, someone new to the neighborhood. As their relationship grew, rumors spread, and people began to whisper, calling her a late bloomer and joking about how wins at her age can be frightening. But Alice, ever the free spirit, ignored the gossip. She proudly declared that love had no age limit and that anyone could find happiness at any stage in life. She would say, "Age is just a number. Love doesn't have boundaries." But as her affection for the young man deepened, her judgment clouded, and it wasn't long before he took advantage of her trust. One day, without any warning, he vanished, leaving Alice heartbroken and financially devastated. As she sat alone in her home, she recalled a line from a Buddhist scripture: "Desire is like a burning arrow. Behind a fleeting joy lies a deep wound." Desire gives temporary sweetness, but its end always returns to emptiness. The lesson here is clear. As we age, emotional desires don't necessarily diminish. They may even grow stronger. The loneliness that often accompanies old age can make us more vulnerable to being manipulated by others who prey on our emotional and physical needs. Psychologists have long observed that while we experience physical changes as we get older, our emotional desires remain as intense as ever. If we aren't careful, those desires can lead us astray, leaving us feeling empty and regretful, much like Alice. The Myeong Shim Bogam, an ancient Korean text, offers this wisdom. If you do not control your greed, you cannot attain peace of mind. This old saying remains just as relevant today. Elvis Presley, for instance, once admitted that he tried to fill the emotional void in his life with material things, relationships, and indulgences. In the end, he said, "I tried to fill the emptiness inside me with something else, but in the end, I almost lost myself." Despite having fame, wealth, and adoration, Elvis still struggles with the internal emptiness that desires can create. This endless thirst for more, whether it's affection, validation, or material gain, is something we all face in varying degrees. The true wisdom lies in recognizing that desire, while a natural part of life, must be controlled. When we let it run unchecked, we lose ourselves. Desire itself is not inherently bad, but the inability to manage it can rob us of peace. I remember one family gathering where my Uncle Jack, in his 70s, shared a story that stuck with me. He smiled as he spoke, but there was a hint of sadness in his eyes. "I once met someone who made me feel young again. I thought I'd found love. But it turned out, all she wanted was my money," he said. The room burst into laughter, but I could see the bitterness in his eyes, a reminder that excessive desire, especially when unchecked by wisdom, can lead to heartache. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment "2" below to let me know that you are still here with me. Buddhist scriptures also teach us, "He who guards his heart is a true victor." It's a reminder that the greatest victory is not in fulfilling every desire, but in maintaining control over those desires and finding inner balance. So how do we protect ourselves from falling into the trap of desire as we age? The answer is simple yet powerful. We must learn to control our desires. Here's a practical step you can take. Observe your heart. Recognize when your emotions or desires are clouding your judgment and causing you to act out of loneliness or fear of missing out. Take a step back and assess whether what you're feeling is truly in your best interest. When you find yourself struggling with a desire, remind yourself of this resolution. I control my desires with wisdom and do not lose myself. Try repeating it with me. I control my desires and protect my life wisely. By doing so, you create a protective barrier that helps you stay grounded and avoid making rash decisions driven by momentary emotional needs. Third, be cautious of obsessive behavior aimed at fulfilling your greed. Have you ever heard the saying, Greed is like an infinite well that remains empty no matter how much you fill it. The more you try to satisfy it, the deeper and darker the well becomes. Greed doesn't just stay a passive feeling. It transforms into obsession, and that obsession can consume you, leaving nothing but emptiness behind. In relationships, when we fall into the trap of seeking validation and satisfaction from the other person, the connection becomes distorted. This is where obsession takes hold. Let me tell you about a woman I once knew, a neighbor named Karen Mitchell. She was a woman full of confidence, perhaps to the point of arrogance. Everyone in the neighborhood knew her as the one who always said, "I'm the best," and in her mind, she truly believed it. Her life was full of pride and self-assurance, yet it also created distance between her and those around her. She didn't seem to care much about making deep connections. After all, she had everything under control, or so she thought. Then one day, she met someone, a man who seemed perfect for her. But her obsession with being in control soon turned the relationship into a battle of wills. She needed him to constantly affirm her belief that she was the best, that she was deserving of admiration and loyalty. His actions, words, and emotions had to meet her standards. In other words, the relationship was on her terms, and it had no room for balance. Predictably, the man grew weary of being scrutinized and controlled. Eventually, he left her, and Karen found herself alone, devastated. In the quiet of her solitude, she remembered a passage from Buddhist scripture. Obsession is the root of suffering, and greed gnaws at the heart. Psychologically, Karen's behavior reflected a condition known as narcissistic personality disorder. This occurs when self-love becomes excessive, to the point where it eclipses empathy for others. When this happens, relationships become unbalanced and unhealthy. Karen's fixation on herself led her to disregard the emotional needs of her partner, and ultimately, the relationship crumbled. Relationships are like a tug of war. If one side pulls too hard, the other side is forced to let go. That's what happened with Karen. The Myeong Shim Bogam, an ancient Korean text, teaches us, excessive greed brings anger. Greed disrupts balance and creates dependency in relationships. This is a timeless lesson that speaks to the dangers of obsession and the imbalance it creates in relationships. It reminds me of a story I once heard about the famous classic novel Hong Gil-dong, a story that has endured through generations. In the tale, Hong Gil-dong's brothers become consumed by their obsession with their father's love and the family's reputation. This desire for power and recognition ultimately led them to lose their family bonds and succumb to their selfishness. This story is a powerful reminder of how unchecked greed can tear relationships apart. At a family gathering some time ago, my younger uncle Charles was boasting as usual about his business prowess. He had the same need to constantly remind everyone that he was the best at what he did. His need for validation was almost palpable, as though the praise of others could fill some inner void. One day, in the middle of one of his boasts, my older uncle, John, quietly interrupted, "Charles, we all know you're the best, but you don't have to keep shouting it to believe it yourself." The room burst into laughter, but I could see a flash of discomfort in Charles's eyes. It was a subtle moment, but it spoke volumes. The truth was that Charles's obsession with proving his worth was pushing others away, even though he thought it would bring him closer to respect and admiration. Buddhist teachings emphasize, emptying allows for filling. In other words, to truly fill our lives with meaningful relationships, we must first let go of our obsession with selfish gain. By releasing greed and obsession, we open ourselves to authentic connections based on mutual respect and understanding. The key to lasting relationships is not about proving your worth or demanding validation. It's about finding balance and embracing others without the weight of excessive need. So let me ask you, what place does greed occupy in your life? Are there moments when your need for recognition, admiration, or control becomes obsessive? How can you maintain a natural flow in your relationships, free from the heavy burden of selfish desire? Here's a simple but powerful resolution. Let go of greed. In relationships, abandon the obsession to elevate yourself at the expense of others, and instead, focus on empathy and understanding. This is the first step toward building healthy, meaningful connections. Today, let this be your meditation. Respect yourself and others while building relationships without excessive greed. To help you remember, try repeating this mantra with me. I let go of my greed and maintain a balance between myself and others. By doing this, you'll find that your relationships become more harmonious, rooted in mutual respect rather than obsession. As the famous singer Michael Jackson once said, "If you don't change yourself in the mirror, you can't change the world." By letting go of our greed and obsession, we start the process of real transformation. And it all begins with looking inward. Fourth, handle the desire to emotionally rely on others carefully. There's a saying that a person's heart is like a boat floating on water. If it stays still, it drifts away, and if a heavy burden shifts to one side, it easily tips over. As we age, loneliness becomes like waves crashing against that boat, making it difficult to maintain emotional balance. It's perfectly natural to want to emotionally rely on someone, to seek comfort and support from others. But what happens when those expectations aren't met? When the person we rely on is no longer there, disappointment hits like a storm, and the waves of loneliness grow even larger. In our neighborhood, there was a woman named Eun Jong. She was known for her bright, lively personality, and everyone loved her. But after separating from her husband, she found herself drifting into deeper loneliness. Initially, Eun Jong handled it well, but over time, she began to emotionally rely on those around her. One day, she became very close to a man in the village. He provided her with the emotional support she craved, helping her endure the days. But as time passed, his attitude changed, and he wasn't there for her when she needed him the most. At that moment, Eun Jong remembered a passage from Buddhist scripture. Those who rely on others will never find their path. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 3 below to let me know that you are still here with me. She realized then that she had been relying on someone else to fill the emptiness within her. But when that support vanished, she was left struggling to find her way. In psychology, the desire to find stability through relationships is called attachment. Attachment is an essential part of human connection, but when it becomes excessive, it disrupts your ability to maintain balance in your own life. The Myeong Shim Bogam, a classic text, teaches us, those who rely on others are anxious, those who are independent are at peace. The key to emotional stability, especially in old age, is learning how to manage your emotions independently. This brings to mind the classic novel The Old Man and the Sea by Ernest Hemingway. The protagonist, Santiago, spends days alone at sea, battling sharks to protect his catch. Despite his isolation, Santiago's struggle is not just against the physical challenges of the sea, but against his inner loneliness. Through that solitude, he discovers his true strength and resilience. Santiago's solitary fight symbolizes the kind of inner strength we should all strive for. It's the idea that facing loneliness on our own, without relying on others, can lead us to a deeper sense of self. My older brother once shared a similar insight. When you're lonely, it's better to find your own heart than to seek others. His words stayed with me, and I realized how important it is to turn inward when the desire to rely on others becomes overwhelming. At a family gathering, my nephew asked, "Why shouldn't we trust people?" My older brother responded, "The center of that trust should be yourself." This idea of Jungyeongeodokt, working during the day and studying at night, doesn't just apply to physical effort but also to managing your inner strength and willpower. It's about having the emotional maturity to trust yourself and not rely too heavily on others to maintain your balance. So, can you rely on yourself? When the urge to seek emotional support arises, can you ensure that it doesn't throw you off course? Can you maintain your emotional center, even in loneliness? Today, I encourage you to make this your meditation. Before relying on someone else, first, learn to manage your own heart. The most effective practical method is this. Manage your emotions and do not lose your center. Even in moments of loneliness, find your peace within. The word you should engrave in your heart today is, I believe in myself and find peace within me. How about making this resolution today? Try repeating it with me. I do not rely on others and manage my own heart. By learning to rely on your emotional strength, you can build a foundation of stability that will carry you through the challenges of life, no matter your age. As the world-famous singer Beyoncé said, if you don't love yourself, no one else will love you. The true power of emotional resilience starts from within. By loving and trusting yourself, you lay the groundwork for healthier relationships with others, and most importantly, with yourself. So, what have we learned today? From the importance of protecting yourself against manipulative relationships and emotional dependence to understanding the risks of excessive desire and obsession, these are key lessons that can help us navigate the complexities of relationships, especially as we grow older. It's essential to maintain balance, trust yourself, and protect your heart from unhealthy attachments, while also finding peace and strength within yourself. Relationships, in all their forms, should bring harmony and support, never imbalance or self-doubt. I'd love to hear from you. What's one thing you've learned today that you're going to put into practice in your own life? Let me know by leaving a comment below. Your thoughts matter, and I believe sharing them can inspire others as well. If you found value in this video, please take a moment to leave your comment, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more content. Your support means a lot. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Stay wise, stay balanced, and most importantly, stay true to yourself.